Now it's time to hear from our distinguished crop of experts that are still in the room to discuss our theme for this year, which is rethinking your route to market strategy. And I would like to also invite again our keynote speaker. I've already spoken to everybody about his profile, and we also heard him engage with us shortly a while ago. So, Mr. Ademola Adeoye, the Sales Director for Flour Mills of Nigeria, please help join us again on stage. Thank you. Thank you very much. We really do have exciting power players within the industry. FMCG, name it. They are here well represented. The next person to join us today on stage is Mr. Kayode Oladapo, the Managing Director, Godrej West Africa. Mr. Kayode Oladapo is a seasoned business leader with a strong track record of success in the consumer product industry. As the business head for Ghana and satellite countries at Godrej Consumer Product Limited, he combines active strategic thinking with proactive execution to drive maximum impact and deliver outstanding results. Kayode is known for his meticulous attention to detail and innovative approach, constantly pushing the boundaries and challenging the status quo to achieve excellence. I'm sure you will hear all of that today as well. His dedication to continuous improvement and sustainable growth is unwavering, and he's highly passionate about his work. A consummate professional, Kayode is known for his dependability and commitment to achieving both short-term and long-term goals. He leads by example, inspiring his team to proactively pursue excellence and reach their full potential. We welcome you again, Mr. Kayode. Thank you for joining us. Ms. Baron Asiedu, she is the head of transformation, Pernod Ricard. And I'll quickly read her profile as well. She's a seasoned professional with over 15 years of experience in diverse roles across multiple industries. Her expertise span corporate strategy, business transformation, digital strategy, project execution, innovation, delivery, financial modeling, budget planning, marketing strategy, corporate communication, digital marketing, experience, customer experience, supply planning, and consumer behavior. She's currently the head of transformation at Pernod Ricard, West Africa. She's responsible for driving transformation programs across revenue, sales, and digital aspects of the business. Prior to this, she held the position of Senior Manager Strategy, Enterprise-Wide Initiative at Coca-Cola Africa, where she monitored and supported the execution of global initiatives while planning and managing the strategic initiatives for the Africa Operating Unit. During Baron's stay there as the head of corporate communication and strategy at Titan Trust Bank, she successfully supported the bank's strategy execution. She also played a pivotal role in branding collateral development, social media campaigns, and winning the bank's prestigious global award for the Best Trade Finance Provider 2021. She is happily married with two amazing kids. Outside of work, she enjoys spending time with her family, engaging in various sporting activities, traveling, reading, writing, and participating in charity work. She is on a mission to contribute her quota to reducing the gender parity gap one woman at a time through her initiative, Vision Uplift. Please welcome again, Baron Asiedu. We're very happy to have you here, madam. And the final person to actually join this panel is one of our own, very well known. I'm sure with him in the team as well, you will enjoy a very robust conversation. Please join me in welcoming the MD Ideas, Group CEO Ideas Holding, in person of Mr. Kehinde Salami. Kehinde is an accomplished marketing strategy consultant with experience of integrated marketing communication, wholesale, and retail marketing strategies. He is an idea agent with excellent project management skills. The MD of Ideas Holding, a group of companies that span across the marketing and food industry. Kenny, as he's popularly called, is an MBA holder from the University of North London, UK. And he also obtained a BA honors from economics from the Thames Valley University, UK. With over 25 years experience in marketing, Kenny started out his career in UK working with notable companies like Heathrow Express, Timberland UK, British Airways London Eye, P&O European Ferries, to mention a few. He moved to Nigeria in 1990, where he worked with Tequila Nigeria for a number of years before establishing Ideas Holding. He is IDM UK certified, Harvard University Design Thinking certified. He is the author of a book called To Every Man a Brain. Thank you so much, Kenny, for being part of this conversation again. And finally, we have the panel moderator in person of Mr. Kush. Kush leads global enterprise growth for Bizom, the retail intelligence platform that digitizes global sales and distribution engines with AI-based, outcome-driven sales automation tools implemented across 30 plus countries for more than 600 leading retail brands and 8 million retailers. The company empowers each stakeholder in the downstream supply chain with intelligent analytics that helps find the right path or right demand in the market and place the right products in the hands of people and in the right outlet. With an extensive background in business growth, route to market automation, and innovation spanning over a decade, Kush's mission is to liberate CPG companies from error-prone workflow and antiquated data, freeing them up to focus on more strategic activities. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Kush as the panel moderator for this session.
Thank you so much, NK, for that wonderful introduction of the panel. I'm so excited to be here all the way across from India to this beautiful country, along with this brilliant panel. One more reason why I'm very excited for this discussion is the kind of opportunity Nigeria presents. The consumer base of Africa as a continent is 1.2 billion today, and it's expected to cross 1.7 billion by 2030. Out of this, $22+ billion were only spent in Nigeria last year as part of the consumer spends. The opportunity here is massive, even in the face of the slowing macros. The question is, how does technology help? The role of technology, what we've seen as part of Bizom and Excite partnership, is more of a catalyst. If you are trying to achieve certain KPIs in 5 years, probably technology can help you do the same in 2.5 years. The only real question is, who makes the first move and gets the first mover advantage? With that theme, I would like to start today's panel discussion, which is rethinking your route to market strategy with technology in focus. And I would love to welcome all of our panelists. Welcome, Mr. Ademola. So we've had amazing discussions with Sunil and the rest of your team on the approach Flour Mills has on digital transformation. And I've been told that you have this superb ability to align head, heart, and hand to achieve business goals. A story which caught my curiosity is that Mr. Ademola joined a very underperforming team in Diageo, and in a very short span of time, he was able to turn it around to one of the most highest achieving teams within the Diageo ecosystem. First of all, would love to understand, how were you able to do that? And the second question would be, what role did data and technology had to play in that journey?
Thank you very much. And Again, I don't know where you got that story from, but I think that happened severally in the course of my career. I've always said I live with people, through people, deliver results through people. And I think one of the notable one that readily comes to mind, and I've got about 10, 15 of such examples, and about 2 or 3 of those players are in this hall today. So I'll take the first one. I was seconded to Ibadan, first sent to Jos, covering 14 states. And the charge was very clear. And I used to humorously tell people that all through my career, it's either I look for trouble or trouble looks for me. I've never had the door open for me at any time in my career. I've had to crack the rocks to make my own results. So I was sent to the north, Jos, region that was down, delivered the result, turned the region around, through people, with people, we turned it around. 18 months, and then they said, oh, come over to the West is done. West then was where the biggest war, beer war, was happening anywhere in Africa. We had South African breweries coming into Nigeria then. We had Nigerian breweries in Ibadan, heavyweight. We only had regional office in Ibadan, and then we've got club, we've got everything happening in Ibadan. And the market share was going down the slope. And 3 months to the end of the financial year, the MD then, who coincidentally is my boss now, by some stroke of luck or coincidence, and said, if there's a man within this business who could transform this market share, then get him for me. And 3 months before the end of the financial year, they shifted me to Ibadan. Drew Toye was part of the team. He's seated right there at the back. He's the head of RTC for Diageo. And I was given only one charge, the team, they were not good enough, just fire all of them and, get a new team and set up. And I got to the region and I looked around and went to trade with the guys, and I said, I was told you guys are not good enough. I was told to fire all of you. And they said, who says? I said, the MD said I should fire all of you, and I have the license to fire you. But I need for you to work with me and then prove the entire business wrong, that there's more to you than what has been seen by the business. And then probing, I found out that these guys were not properly tooled. They were not properly kitted. The right strategy to win was not being implemented. You are in the heart of a beer war happening in Africa, and you tell people to go to war with Chakabula when people are fighting with submachine guns and are having airplanes dropping payload on people. So it was clear. I brought in the power of data, dissected the whole of the region into different parts and picked state by state, town by town. Every population above 100,000 people. What are the economic drivers? We defined that with the same set of people, by the way. And we began to look at where are the opportunities, what are the challenges, and we began to isolate the challenges by region. What are the data to support whatever it is we have in here? First, from the product, we didn't have the right product. Then we told Diageo we needed a regional brand. And they said, no, Diageo don't do regional brand. Globally, the chief marketing officer for Diageo flew in all the way from UK, drove all the way from Lagos to Ibadan, and had a meeting with me, and he said, we don't do regional brands. We are Diageo. And I said, we are Diageo, but we will lose in this market if we don't do the right. And I was bold enough to say that. And then he left and went to see my MD, and then the conversation was had. 3 months down the line, they asked me what I wanted, and I said, I want to take on South African breweries. I need to pitch with Do Big Beer. And they said, no, we can't do regional brands. We'll try and produce one for you. And it was through persistence, power of data, understanding where we're losing here and who we're losing here to and how we're losing here that I demanded for regional brands to be made for me. Dubik was produced for me, Demola Adeoye, in southwestern part of Nigeria as the first regional brand that Guinness Nigeria PLC ever had. And I went on to sign 3SC Football Club, Sunshine Stars of Akure, and I think someone is here who worked with me on that project, and as we sponsored them, and it wasn't so much to do those things. You got to be smart and know the right people. I met Mutiu Adepoju, the headmaster, got 3SC signed up. And on the day of the launch, we had to get a Jimobi of blessed memory to endorse the brand as 3SC beer. And I deployed the team and started building distribution. That team led the market share again for Diageo that financial year. That team became, in less than a year, the hunting ground for talents across Diageo. They depleted that team. There's a member of that team then who today still works with Diageo, met as a sales rep, has grown to become the marketing director for a part of Diageo, commanding about 23 countries in Africa today. Part of the team is Drew to seated at the back. A man in the thick. The passion was so high. A man who drove a vehicle without a brake from Ijebu-Ode to Ibadan to deliver product is seated at the back there. That was the passion. I didn't ask him to risk his life. He chose to do it out of passion anyways. But that was the fire with which the team worked. At night, Ejiro was here, fine capability brain. We would gather as a team at night. Mass defense, mass attack, we move into UI. We're sampling people. We're turning tables around. In less than 18 months, that business turned around. Power of data, understanding where to lose. The consistency at knowing exactly what you want and demanding for it. Number 3, the people. Biggest asset that you ever have. And number 4, as a team leader, ability to dig into the trench and start with the team in the trench and fight with them from the trench actually saw us through that phase. I think that was one of very many. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for a wonderfully comprehensive answer, Mr. Ademola. I think this happens with every transformation, right? When you bring in transformation to an emerging market, there is an immediate initial resistance from the users, right? Whether will we lose our jobs? The first time we started doing Bizom, started doing beat optimization, the first resistance where we faced was that right now 100 guys are doing 200 routes. Perhaps after beat optimization, you only need 80 guys. You don't need to fire your team. You need to add more outlets. And a lot of care has to go when you're deploying these technologies so that that initial resistance can be carefully dealt with and you have your team on the side of technology, not against. Thank you so much, Mr. Ademola, for bringing that up. I think one more thing which came out, which you were bold enough to question Diageo and bring in localization in the Nigeria market. One other company which has done it wonderfully in Nigeria market is Godrej, and we have Mr. Kayode here. I think they've brilliantly localized. They've acquired popular brands and brought in a lot of RTM transformation. Interestingly, Godrej has been a long-term partner with Bizom for their entire route to market automation. And Mr. Kayode being someone very, very hands-on with the data, I would like to directly ask him, how has Salesforce automation and distributor management automation help you in handling P&L of West Africa?
Thanks, Kush. Look, let me start by sharing a few ideologies I have. Companies like ours, we do two things. We make products and we sell products. It's basically that, yeah? Everything in between making products and selling products is service provision for efficiency and effectiveness. So that's the first premise. I think the second premise is an underlying principle that consumers pay for value and not for waste, right? I think the third one is that the trade landscape has evolved significantly in Nigeria. And it was interesting listening to Adeoye talking earlier. Luckily, I was not anywhere around trade in the days where people used to do ballots and salesmen were kings. Because I can imagine how I would feel if I was a potential distributor having to bow to a salesman. And, having been sent to school with proceeds from selling Coca-Cola, Pepsi, and some beers, I understand I would have been super upset to see my mom begging salesmen for allotments. So thank God I didn't see that. But I also, got into the industry at a time where, Nestle was basically rethinking, growth acceleration in Nigeria. And there are lots of battle-tested veterans in the room, and Benga Alabi is one. I think he's one of those, the northern generals of Nestle, and, looking through Salesforce automation and their Sales Max 1, 2, and 3 projects, 3 things were clear. Data into insights is one of the fastest ways to accelerate. A lot of people think that technology is about driving efficiency. I think you can only become efficient after you've been effective, right? And in a market like Nigeria, where people grow strong double digits year on year, and you have 3-5-year CAGRs on double-digit growth, which is totally antithetical to what you'd find in Europe, the US, or even any emerged market. I suspect maybe still a bit in India, but you know, in markets like this, it's really to drive acceleration of growth and effectiveness. So the first thing that I'm clear about is that tech should not be something we're afraid of. It should be something that we embrace, right? Understanding that consumers don't pay for waste also means that we have to grow fast at the lowest possible cost with the highest level of strike rates. Yeah. Now, if I come back to my first principle saying that we make products and we sell products, I always tell my team, I don't care what your job title is or what your paycheck is like. If you're not making products on the factory floor and you're not selling products on the front line, you're a service provider, right? And for the service providers to give the guys on the front line the right level of support that allows them become more effective with far less stress and more productivity, we need tech. Yep, we need data. We need to be able to interpret that data into the right insights that allows for ultimate action points that gives you bullseye efficiency and effectiveness. So, I mean, you know this already. I'm sure we shouldn't talk about how much stress I give you about, you know. But the key is that leveraging tools like Bizom, right, really helps us accelerate our growth. And, you know, I'm proud to say that the West African market has been Godred's growth engine in the last 15 years, right? And for a company that has been in existence for 129 years, if we've given them back-to-back for 10 years, the fastest growth rates, then we're doing something right. And I think that leveraging tech is a big part of that. Now, it's easy to say this for Godrej, and you can say, okay, yes, it's still young in the African space, but I think if we've been here less than 2 decades and we've grown or outgrown the likes of Cadbury, Reckitt, and it's okay to blow our trumpets with very little apology. You know, if we've done that, you know, it's easy to say, okay, yeah, but it's because you guys are still in the growth phase and, you know, you've not covered Nigeria yet. But I tell you this, I was in Nestle for upwards of 13 years, right? Nestle Nigeria remains one of the fastest growing organizations within the Nestle world still after over 50 years or 60 years in Nigeria, right? So data, tech, and the effective use of both is the single most important success factor every organization needs. You know, you were saying something earlier, and you said markets like Nigeria would always stay a traditional trade landscape. I agree. E-commerce will most likely never go beyond 10%. But what's interesting is tech is going to power the remaining 90%. And we've seen that happen in China. You know, it's going to be an offline to online, online to offline reality, and tech will power the effectiveness and the efficiency of that. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's the summary of my take and why we still push you every day for more.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kayode. I think you've only made us better in the West African market. Thank you so much. So you spoke a little bit about insight-based execution. I think insight-based execution is a topic which is very close to Mrs. Berong's heart. Miss Berong has led an entire distributor automation project when she was in GSK, and I would love to understand. See, one of the primary problems which comes when you try to deploy a distributor automation solution is the resistance to adoption from the distributors. I would love to understand from Mrs. Berong, how did you solve those adoption challenges?
You know, it's quite a journey in the sense that you identify something sitting in the back end or in the strategy office. You think you have a beautiful solution. You go to all the demos, you know, you've run all the numbers, you've created the business case, then you come to the market and you roll out, and it's a disaster. It's a disaster because the people who you have designed this fantastic tool for don't appreciate it. It's an even bigger disaster because the people who you rely on to convince the people to use this don't believe in it either. And so what do you have? You have a failed product. You come back to the drawing board and you're trying to figure out, okay, where do we go from here? And this scenario is something that is, I think, almost everybody can relate to. I think it comes with the change. You know, when you're trying to drive a transformation, at the end of the day, the biggest underlying factor is the change. And the challenge that you face is the resistance to that change. and technology is not exempt to that. Interestingly, I had a conversation with Kaede and Kenny before we came in here, and we're discussing the elements of how to drive that adoption to change. One thing that is critical and cannot be underestimated is the people factor. People from within the organization and the people that you're providing the solution to. So as fancy as a tool is in terms of driving efficiency or productivity, if the people that you're designing that tool for don't see it as a need for them, then the product is dead on arrival. If the people who are supposed to deploy this solution don't think that it enhances their business, then of course it's not going to take flight. So again, I think the answer is in what I've said, in trying to understand truly the need of whoever you're providing the solution for, whether it's to drive efficiency, to increase revenues from the people or your internal users, or for the end user to say, okay, how does this impact them? Now, going back to the specific example that you raised when I was with GSK, and I'm sure for most people that can relate to, when you're talking about your key distributors, for them, yes, you can be driving efficiency and whatnot, but at the end of the day, all everybody cares about is the naira and kobo of it. How are you able to help me grow my revenue? The moment you're able to break it down in simple terms, which is what we did. At that time we had a workshop. One of my former colleagues is here actually. We had a workshop. We sat down, we had a table, we would put in the numbers, we would show what the impact is of if you buy this is what it will translate to at this price, so that everybody was equipped. When they go out into the sales field, you take that table, you are showing your distributor, if you put this like this is what it will translate to. So of course, I think the methodology still remains the same, whether it's back in, 20 years ago or now. How you understand and are able to communicate the solution to the person that you're providing the solution for.
Thank you so much for that. And I understand the level of hands-on experience you've had on the market. Must have been terrific. This brings me to an interesting thing, which Godson often says, is that to a user, you cannot really pitch features. You have to pitch the value, the nairas he will save or gain from using that automation solution, and that is very important. That is something we've learned, and I think you brought out a beautiful point, and we've seen this happening over the years. Large companies spent millions of dollars trying to deploy horizontal SaaS platforms, standards, one-size-fits-all SaaS platforms in emerging markets. And that is not the answer. I think the answer to emerging markets is verticalized SaaS. For someone who knows the market as well as the domain and is able to localize the solution as per the particular market. Thank you so much, Ms. Menon, for that answer. So as someone who's been a part of this industry and built an entire business from scratch, Mr. Kenny, now that the way macros are going and the trade promotion margins will be getting squeezed going forward, what is the role of tech in store activation? What is the role of rethinking your route to market strategy when it comes to conserving your trade promotion margins?
Okay, good afternoon. I think for me, it's very clear that technology has a very significant role to play in the future that we seek. Having worked in the industry for a while now, I truly understand what needs to be done at every level. And when you look at the topic that Godson picked for this seminar, which is rethinking your route to market strategy, the operative word for me is the rethinking. I don't think we do enough of thinking as a people, as practitioners, as business owners. And there are a few things I'll just drop here, just to give you an idea of how you can start to shape behavior, think differently, and then the impact that has on your route to market strategy. Let me give you an example. And for the marketing directors and marketing managers that are here, I'll send you my invoice later. If you look at the transformation that's happened in the Southwest over the last 1 year, I think it's even last 6 months, especially the movement of goods and services on the Lagos to Ibadan highway. You discover now that you can move your product, you can get to Ibadan in an hour now from Lagos, right? And the question I ask some CEOs is, this reality is here. Let's look at your logistics and distribution, just as one example. Let me pick Pernod. Perhaps 50% of Pernod Ricard products and brands is sold in Lagos. And another 50% probably sold outside Lagos. Lagos, you're probably warehousing your imported products at 35,000 naira per square meter. Yeah? An hour from Lagos, you're probably warehousing at 15,000, 20,000 per square meter. The data is staring you in the face. The reality is here. With that alone, that thinking alone, it starts to affect your route to market. By somebody taking a strategic decision to say, why must we warehouse 100% of what we produce at 35,000 naira per square meter? When just 1 hour's drive away, 2 hours by truck, we can have our distribution and also our logistics costs. Do you understand? I'll send my invoice later. The second thing I'd like to mention here is, even as business owners, as brand managers, and as brand custodians, when you look at certain brands and the involvement of the categories and the segments, you start to see changes that are happening before our very eyes. Yeah? For example, you look at something like, one instructive thing that I've noticed is I'm starting to see yogurt show up where? In bars and lounge. I'm sure you go to bars and lounge, you probably notice that you have Hollandia yogurt and all sorts of yogurt, right? What are they using them for? They use them to make cocktails, behavior, culture. Ladies take them, those who don't like to take alcoholic beverages. So your route to market should now be shaped by consumer behavior, and that can only be understood via insights. You can then use technology to enable that action to take place in a way that you desire it for your brands. Do you understand? I was having a conversation with the former marketing director of UAC, and we share the same sentiment, where Gala, ordinarily 70-80% maybe sold on the road, but guess what? Gala was also selling quite well in highbrow supermarkets like Rene. You probably ask yourself, Ikoyi, Rene, supermarket, how can Gala be selling in a highbrow supermarket area? It is the insight that drove those kind of placements. Why? The expatriate that lives in Ikoyi maybe only goes to those supermarkets on weekends. During the week, they'll send the house help, they'll send the nanny, they'll send the driver. When those ones buy things, there's change, they'll use Gala. So the placement, again, was by behavior and by insights. The last one, my very good friend Kayode and Benga are here. You know, the guys from Godrej. I've been asking the question, and I know we'll still revisit it. You know, Darling Hair Care, which is the #1 flagship brand. And by the way, the best hair brand in Nigeria. Thank you very much. You know, Darling is something that is used by ladies. And where do 50 to 60% of these ladies end up. They end up in bars, in lounges, in clubs. So the rethinking of your route to market strategy is how can I have placement where these ladies will end up and have a collaboration with bars and make them part of my ecosystem beyond my traditional route to market. This is the rethinking that we're talking about. And I'll just stop here because anything beyond there, I will charge you. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Kenny. I think that kind of advice is definitely worth sending an invoice for. Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think we come back to Mr. Adimola. As someone who has had so much of sales experience, so much of field experience, we have a lot of our partners here, by the way, leadership from TGI, Grand Oak, STL, and a lot of other partners whom Excite and Bizom will be rolling out sales transformation. As someone who's done it and experienced it, led large transformation projects, what advice do you have for our teams who would be going through that journey in the next 1 year?
I think it's been said widely here that there would always be resistance to change in life until the benefits of those changes are brought to the fore. And for every new thing that starts small, I think the days of little resistance are what we should not overlook. You have a team rolling out certain technology across different platforms, from different places, across different organizations, who will be met with high level of resistance. And she said something very important much earlier, that they got to a point they were rolling out something, it wasn't understood by people. They went to the extreme case of simplification to say, plug this in, this is what it gives you. Plug this in, this is what it gives you. And like I already said much earlier, even the traditional that we have today will still be powered by the tech that we're looking for, and some people are a bit resistant to those changes. So my advice to your team is to understand the fact that everything good that you start, everything innovative that you start, there's a level of resistance you meet in people you want to roll it out with. And the first layer, and I think the first line of defense, or how would I put the first line of design and approach that you should have at overcoming those objections is to ensure that things are simplified. People understand the benefit of what you are rolling out. They understand the value it brings to their business. They understand how it guides their business decision. They understand how data and information could be accumulated through such exercise to guide future decision in terms of even marketing spends and the directional bullseyes, organizational spend to build those brands. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I would like to come to Mr. Coyote. I think you spoke a little bit about insight-based execution, right? I understand. We've already had a very detailed discussion, built a roadmap around insight-based execution, but primarily for West Africa, what do you think the next 3 years look like for insight-based execution using tech?
So I'm trying to balance my optimism versus realism. Well, if I just take a journey down memory lane and I go 7-8 years ago when the concept of DMS, started to gain grounds. I recall there was a huge resistance to DMS by distributors, right? And I remember once going to a very interesting distributor, a lady called Adebukola in Okearin at the time. And we're having conversations about DMS, and she listened while eating rice, with meat and beans. And as we're talking, lots of English, she was listening. And when she was done, or when we were done, she looked at us and said, Motigbo kilo bade. Which is basically, I've heard you, what's in it for me? I mean, what does this mean? Right? But I think we were lucky also to have seasoned salesmen there who understood the language of trade, who were able to explain to her what she was losing without realizing. Because, they think turnover, right? And they think retained earnings, but they don't understand losses through inefficiencies, losses through theft, and all of that. They also don't understand losses through lost sales, right? That is not happening with their distribution team. Yeah. As soon as people were able to imbibe that understanding, the adoption rates spiraled upwards, right? But that was not all. We started realizing that across distributors, retained earnings in percentage increased. And then the hunger for joint business planning started coming. And what that drove was creating a much more sustainable, thriving ecosystem, right? There was a slide that Dewey had put up, earlier, and it's one of those gems. I don't know. Godson must have, gained a lot of equity because people pay for that data, right? And when you just look at the retail landscape of Nigeria, you understand that it's multi-layered. And the only way to sustain that ecosystem without increasing the cost to serve to the point where consumers become resistant to purchase, right, is by driving efficiencies through that line. So what's going to happen over the next 3 years, in my opinion, is a faster adoption, right, of ERP systems that drives the trade landscape. DMS, Salesforce automation, all of that will happen. But there's a second layer to that. What I also see happening from the consumer space is the faster adoption of marketplaces, virtual marketplaces. It's interesting today when you look at the payment platforms, right, and how fintechs and telcos are becoming one and the same. How we've moved from banking halls to wallet systems, right? And how that is facilitating, faster turnaround times in payments, delivery of goods and services, reduction of interest rates because of your efficiency of cash management, right? And the plowback of that into true value-adding consumer investments, right? So what's going to happen over the next 3 years is that with a far more sophisticated consumer base, more demanding, tech-hungry young consumers who actually do not care about you as much as they care about themselves, which is, again, the right thing, we will be forced to leverage tech much more. But there's going to be a problem. We are going to have an explosion of data points. Actually, today we already have that, right? I mean, when I just think about the quantum of data the telcos sit on consumer purchase patterns, data consumption patterns, communication patterns, interest patterns, the dimensioning of that data into insight that truly drives change and competitive advantage for companies becomes super crucial. And one of the things that I start to worry about is how quickly do we start to layer machine learning to help us with that, right? So that's going to come. There's a lot of conversation about AI and the regulation of AI. All of that, we'll get there, but that's also going to come in. So the adoption of tech is going to be faster, yeah? The impact is going to be significantly higher than what we had in the last 10 years. But what that is going to do is accelerate the trade landscape, irrespective or in spite of the macro challenges that we are facing, right? Because when you look at trade across West Africa, the output of businesses is counterintuitive to the challenges the businesses are, experiencing. A lot of times I see companies growing and I'm wondering how are we still doing it, right? So the fundamentals of the geography we are in says that businesses will thrive. But for us to thrive sustainably, tech adoption is going to drive that. And that's what I anticipate over the next 3 years.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Kayode. In fact, in the face of macro slowdown, I think insight-based execution will become even more important to drive those efficiencies. Thank you so much for the wonderful answer. So I think 2 more questions and then we'll open the floor for questions from the audience. So please start preparing your questions. I would want to understand, Ms. Berong, the roadmap ahead for Pernod in terms of RTM automation and digital transformation. What have you planned? No trade secrets to be revealed, but definitely just a high-level overview of what do you think, not just Pernod, the entire Alcobev industry. How will it change in terms of digital transformation?
So when you asked me the question, I was like, it's like you want me to share my strategy. So I mean, it's a good question, and like you said, it's not a Pernod Ricard question. It's any business that wants to remain a going concern question. The truth is, like Coyote already said, it's the ability to be able to not just generate the insight, but to understand the insight. And like Ademola had said earlier, is about being able to take action when you receive that insight. And anything that we want to do. So I could tell you, like, we have the best laid plans. Yes, we have a key focus on digital transformation, which is under my purview. But again, it's about how do we generate the insight? What do we do when we get the insight? And how do we take action? Ultimately, like I had said earlier, everything is designed around the consumer, the end user. But to get to the end user, yes, you have a customer, right? And so if you look at it in those two different segments, the how now that you reach those different categories of end users, if you like, is now where the tech comes into play. I like this book, Who Moved My Cheese? I'm sure most of us have read it. One day, everything is business as usual. Like my fellow panelists have said, in terms of, yes, traditional market is still going to be a key focus, but then one day you wake up and it's not. And so, as a transformation specialist, this is my worry. Like, you sit down and you may not know how things are going to change because nobody has a crystal ball to say how it's going to evolve. But hey, 2, 3 years ago, there was COVID. Nobody could have predicted that. We literally slept and woke up and the landscape had changed. And so the question is, how do we anticipate not the change in itself, but our response to the change? We can sit down and we can talk about deploying all the tech that we want, but if we're not building the systems that make us adaptable, we will fail. The systems could be in the tools, the systems could be in the people, and the systems could be in the process. And ultimately, that's what really guides the transformation. So again, as part of my role, and I'm sure we all have experienced it in our different areas, the people factor is critical. Because again, if we don't have the mindset that something is going to change, you wake up one day and it has changed. So in answering your question, yes, we know digital, we have huge digital plans, how we're able to say, okay, we're going to plug into marketing, we're going to plug into commercial, we're going to enhance our processes. Yes, I mean, all fantastic stuff. But again, it's about how readily are we able to be adaptable when that change comes, whatever that change is, and how do we respond in the critical moment. So I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ms. Brown. In fact, when we do our digital transformation workshops, we have a very unusual way of going about it. We start with the risks first and how we mitigate it, and then come to the rollout plans. So yeah, thank you so much for that answer. Last question from the podium, going to Mr. Kenny. Mr. Kenny, you've built a business from scratch. We all know Nigeria is the land of opportunity. We have upcoming businesses, upcoming partnerships like Bizom and Excite, smart entrepreneurs like Godson doing the work and actually shaping the industry. What advice do you have for people who might think of taking the plunge in the next few years and actually starting up their own business?
I think for me, I mentioned it downstairs when we had a conversation. Myself, Demola, Kayode, and Baron. You might not realize it. And if you don't, and you're in this room, please, from today, start to realize it. Money is not the most important thing in starting a business. Your most important investment and the most important tool is your reputation. If you do not have a good reputation, you can have all the money in the world. Nobody would want to listen to you. When I came back to Nigeria in 2002, I worked in a company rose to the level of the MD. I was there for 7 years and 3 months. In coming back to Nigeria, I was not looking for money. Why? Because where I was coming from, I was already established. I bought my house at the age of 26. I had 2 cars. I had so much money. It was even the same car, different color. Just to show you how wasteful. So I drive the cream one during the week, the white one on Saturday, Sunday. Is that not madness? Yes. That's my story. But coming to Nigeria, they now asked me, why? After 19 years of living this country. I said, because the best advantage lies in the most disadvantaged nations. The mere fact that something is not working is an opportunity for you to fix it. What do I want to fix in UK after almost 20 years? Everything you need is there for you. But in Nigeria, you have to have your own water, your own electricity, your own internet, everything, right? The only thing that is free that you don't need to provide is the air you breathe. So, came in, spent time, I invested my time. I was not looking for money, I was looking for fulfillment. And that fulfillment lied in working in an industry, in a business that will make me happy. And invested the time and built up the network. So from the day I said I was going, that 7 years and 3 months was not wasted. It was my reputation that allowed the business to stay the way it is till today. Because when you mention the name, it's not, hey, don't go there. Doors will open for you. So spend time to invest in your social capital, which is your reputation. People will bring money to support your aspirations. So I think that's, for me, the number one. The second thing is people. When you're setting up your business, you've got to be conscious of culture and people. You have to build the right culture. We had a strategy session, I think 3 years ago, and the HR director asked me, KS, this culture thing that you keep talking about, it's not even documented in our HR manual. And I said to her, I responded, she's seated here. I said to her, for us, culture is not always about what you write down on a piece of paper. It is how the company makes you feel. Are you with me? So spend time on culture, then go and look for the people that can fit within your culture. The reason why Man United is not doing well today, and by the way, that's the best football club in Nigeria, the world. No, they are. They're the best football club in the world, regardless of what you say. Demola, I know you are shaking your head. The reason why Man U is not doing well today is because they have spent money to go and sign players who don't fit into a system. So within our own ecosystem and our business, we will not just sign superstars. We're very conscious to look for what I call TAPs. Talent, attitude, and passion. I'm not looking for somebody who is ready now. I'm more concerned about the person who is ready later. We will then invest our resources. Just prove to us during your interview process, are you highly talented? Do you have the right attitude? And are you passionate about life and what you want to achieve within that life? So those are the little things I'd just like to drop. Entrepreneurship is tough, but I can assure you it's highly fulfilling. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kim. I think that was a phenomenal answer. And before we start a conversation between United versus Chelsea, I think we'll open the floor for questions. So you can please feel free to raise your hands for any questions which you have.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Emobo Esiedafe. I'm the head of sales for BA Distribution Nigeria Limited. We sell a couple of products like Andre Champagne, Calorosi, Dominio, and the likes. Now, my challenge is this. In my business, it's 100% import, okay? And with the current fall of the Naira, especially in the international market, what you buy today for maybe 10 billion, by the time you go to ship them back into the country, it's going to cost about maybe 11 point something or 12 billion. Now, in this kind of business, for us to be able to sustain our market share and do not crash from the market, we've been reviewing price over time. But lately, customers are beginning to push back to say that either they cannot buy what we have reviewed or they are reducing the quantity. And as such, our volume is dropping. Now, how then do we change our route to market to be able to sustain either the volume or grow the volume of our business?
All right. Thank you for the question.
You touched on a very familiar turf. Approximately 90 to 98% import raw material dependent. And if I tell you in my 23 years career, I have not seen price increases being taken the way it's been taken in the last 1 year, in the last 22 years. You sleep, you wake up. You sleep, dollar sleeps with you at 900. He wakes up with you at 930. You had consignment on the high sea that was bought at 900. Before it gets to Nigeria, it's 950. You sell at 900 naira, you change the money back to dollar and pay back your vendors out there. Dead on arrival, you're incurring loss before the product even actually lands within your warehouse. Now, the easy way out for this is, number one, you sell products that are consumed along certain lifestyle lines. The prices would go up. Now, I always ask people the question each time they say, oh, this product is not doing very well. The rate of sale, I prefer to hear the rate of sales is low rather than no one is buying it at all. So when you say the rate of sales is, you have a slowdown in the rate of sales, I get excited that there are still people buying this product. You then need to recheck yourself where and who consumes your product. How are they demographically spread across the different geopolitical zones in Nigeria? Have you exhausted the opportunities that is available for that product today? And I said the answer to all this that I'm saying is absolutely no. If it slows down because the prices have gone up, you still have people picking up this product, it shows clearly that there's still opportunities across different places for this product. Check your data. Check your weighted, check your numeric distribution. Check, clearly understand in which of the channels do I play. How many of those outlets are available within the four corners of Nigeria today? In how many of those outlets am I currently playing today? In how many am I not playing? In how many other places would I spread into? They said if you say education is very expensive, that sometimes it's good to try ignorance and understand the price of ignorance as well too. So this requires that there are some level of investment that you have to put behind the way you go to market. Some level of investment you have to put in resource. There's level of investment you have to get to do for you in terms of creating the right level of awareness, and he can bring his bill to you. Mine I'm giving free of charge, and ensure that even within where you play today, if you take Lagos and tear Lagos apart into pieces, you still find out that you're barely scratching the surface as far as the opportunity is concerned. But the key challenge that most organizations have today is they are boxed into a space where they think, even when the macro goes wrong, and the tides are almost swimming against you, you're tempted to stay within that cocoon space and believe solutions will come to you. There's a price for such solutions. There is the appetite for you to have those solutions, and there's a drive for you with speed to get those solutions. So clearly, the opportunities are still there for you, but look inwards, look at where you're selling currently, understand where the channels that represent opportunities for you, understand how many of them are you in, and how many of them would you further expand your footprint into. Consult Kenny for strong awareness, and he will bring his bill to you, and then you'll be fine.
Sorry, just to chip in, and you're totally right. Yeah, I think at times like this, especially for the organization you work with, footprint expansion is one of the low-hanging fruits, right, to sustain your volume. But it's easy to say footprint expansion. I'm also suspecting that the infrastructure you have today will need significant investment to expand that, right? Just a couple of things to also think about. You know, nobody saves themselves. You don't save your way through a recession. You have to invest through a recession to stimulate growth, right? But investment means that you're putting in more cost, right? And at a time where your margins are pressured, again, certain conversations will be had with your finance team, and I don't think they'll be pleasant. I think the unfair thing to the sales team is that whenever volumes are challenged, everybody looks at the sales team and expects them to work a miracle. I think one of the things I always encourage my sales team to do is challenge back the channels, right? And come back to your sales operations team and your marketing team. I think it's time for them to do the work that generates more demand. Yeah? Because at a time where consumers are saying no, you know, especially in discretionary categories like yours that will be shrinking, yeah, you will need to stimulate preference for your brand, right? So that needs to happen. But I think another thing needs to happen. You cannot pass off all of the incremental costs coming to consumers. There's an elasticity for your category. And somehow you will need to go back to the organization to also help them rethink their margin expectations, right? Because your growth is not saturated. You would have to make a strategic call on volume increase that gives you long-term market share gains versus, you know, today's margins, right? Because every single sale you lose today in a category like yours, somebody else is picking up and they're developing a reference taste. And when things go back to being good, your brand will not be the one on the table or in the cup, right? I'm beginning to rethink Glenfiddich because maybe it's time to go to Jack Daniels. But that's a challenge. So you also need to have that conversation and have a holistic generating demand discussion, right? Again, you know, just push your team to also do an end-to-end value chain optimization. This is the time where you rethink trade spend, right? And put the trade spend in the good calorie area, right? Not just wholesaler margins and distributor margins, but the kind of trade spend that drives offtake, right? And increases footprint. So I think don't take a one-off approach, you know, have a good conversation with the full generating demand team, bring the finance guys in the room and your supply chain guys in the room. They need to find the efficiencies, right? Your marketing team needs to do some work and make sure that the work that they are doing actually is the one that gives direct ROI for the short term now, yeah, and helps you continue to get yourself into the cups. Okay?
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Tracy Dabo. I'm head of sales and partnership with Lekki Mills. So Lekki Mills is an agro-processing company and we process yam. So the challenge I'm having in my estate is because we do packaged frozen yams and breaking into the Nigerian market has been really, really difficult. And now I'm kind of thinking exporting my product when I know that the market here really needs it. I mean, we produce so much yam and it goes to waste. And we found a solution to save these yams. But now we're finding it hard to break into the market because Nigerians feel because it's packaged, then maybe there's something wrong with it and it's not healthy. But we're eating packaged French fries. I mean, you go into the market, you go meet somebody, I'm like, okay, I have this package here, man. They say, oh, we don't eat processed food. But you get there and they're serving processed French fries. And if you know the process that is used to make French fries, then you realize that, trust me, you're eating worse. But then it's really hard. So I'm just wondering, what strategy do I need to do? How do I get to the decision maker? Because sometimes it's really crazy because of maybe the change people will make from buying raw yams, they block every avenue to actually meet the person that will help with these sales and help me get my desired outcome.
I love entrepreneurs. Now, I think for me, two things are required for you. The first one is you really need to understand the market that you are serving, and then the kind of value each segment of the market is looking for. It's very evident that one of the segments that you are serving will be the B2C. And for B2C, I believe it's behavior. You need to convince them that your yam is just as good as any other yam that they're cutting in their homes, right? So there has to be some level of education, experiential marketing. You need to go out there in the different channels and do sampling. You know, you might even have to do a video of your process and share snippets of it just to convince these guys. You'll be looking at neighborhood stores, you'll be looking at modern trade outlets. That comes at an expense, of course, but it's possible. The second thing that you need to look at is, I think you have a B2B proposition as well. In Nigeria, I've never seen a country that throws as many parties as we do in Nigeria. There's a B2B proposition to your business. You're talking of event planners, you're talking of caterers. How many of them are within your ecosystem? If you're able to properly understand how much time a caterer spends on peeling yam, and you're able to quantify that in monetary terms, and restaurants to show them, I can save you 64 minutes a week, which is equivalent to 16,000 naira, and you extrapolate that over a year by just adopting this our yam, perhaps you're going to start to see some traction there. So I think there's a very clear case for you to really understand the market. There's a B2C proposition, there's a B2B proposition, and each one requires some level of education, enlightenment, mentoring, and then you now start to put in place the processes and the marketing discipline that would help you move from where you are to where you want to be. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kenny. I think as someone who's working hand in hand with multiple consumer packaged goods firm here in Nigeria, Godson would love to take your take.
I want a round of applause for this panel. Not bragging, but I don't think you can put together a better panel anywhere in Nigeria. These are the best the industry has to offer. Coming from a service provider, there's something very germane happening here today. Is the fact that we're witnessing the first collaborative platform where people who should ideally or seemingly be competitors are happily sharing. And that for me is a very big win. So I want to thank the panelists for making their time available. As a service provider, you deal with a lot of briefs. So you company and they say, oh, this is our strategy. And then you listen to it, and then 2 days time you're in an environment and they are sharing a different strategy, and you begin to join the dots, say, hey, there's an opportunity for collaboration here, there's something we can share. But that's really not happening much. The fences are going up when they should come down. So I think there's a huge opportunity for collaborative competition, and I want to call it that. Yes, you're competing, but where possible, we can leverage. So speaking to the question, I think this is the route to market challenge, where I think it's a people problem, in the sense that if you get the right people in your team, magic. And why do I say that? I have that you are doing a lot of work trying to be both the manufacturer, the distributor, at the same time. And hence, you're spreading yourself too thin, then you're crashing. That's my first line thought. I might be wrong completely. So my advice would be begin to explore opportunities of collaboration, passing the distribution part of what you do to people who own that pipeline and can do it better, create value for them. Of the day, there's going to be something on the table for them. I always say this to brands: when you're dealing with distributor, you're not just trying to push your products down their pipeline, you're actually competing for their share of capital. For every cycle, they recover some money. What determines where that capital is deployed per time, kind of value, and the sort of promotions and the convenience that you give them. Why should I buy a Penod product? Why instead of buying a Diageo product? Work is okay. I also say to people that buying increasingly is no longer an activity, journey. Showrooms have become, or what would I? Modern markets have become experience centers. Oh, sorry. So people go into the shop to experience your product and then go home to buy it online, right? The market is evolving and the businesses has to evolve along. So I sample, I try, and then where is the purchasing happening? Where is it starting? How are you deployed to make sure you're following this customer through this pipeline onto an ultimate purchase? That, I think, is I want to limit my comments to just that. Thank you very much.
Interesting you said people are happy to buy French fries, which are already caught in packaging. And then they talk about yam in a pack not being organic, right? You know, there was an interesting reality in the height of COVID, and there was a very provocative advert that Mercedes had done. And I remember they had to take it off after a while. But you know, actually this was before COVID, it was the recession in 2017. And they had put up this advert where an E-Class had driven by and, you know, they had shown all the fantastic features. And then there was a payoff line that said, Mercedes, not for the poor. Right? And I was, at that time, certain they were going to get a backlash. Right? They didn't get a backlash. Actually, their books for 17, 18, and 19 showed that their factory lines were super pressured and they made good profit. And I understood at that point that Mercedes wasn't selling a car. They were selling status and social equity, right? And at the time where everybody was being poor, having the Mercedes, even if it was an A-class, meant the Silver Star made you be in a better situation, right? I remember having conversations with my boss at the time that it would be nice to have one. Don't ask how that went. I think the real question to ask is, are you selling yam or are you selling convenience? Because if you're selling convenience, then you really need to start doing some dimensioning. Who needs convenience? And where do they find that convenience? So you need to map your channel to your consumer strategy, right? I think when you do that and you layer it with the right communication, make sure you're targeting. You see, it's always heart over mind, right? And in marketing, you know, if you communicate rational benefits, you get short-term sales. If you connect with the heart, you keep it open forever. Yeah? And that's why, you know, the most irrational people on God's earth are apple lovers. Yeah? And speaking as to be hypocritical, saying as I'm one, but you know, I had a conversation with one of my nephews a few years back, and it was this Apple versus Android debate, and we stare with facts, and at some point, you know, I'd run out of any fact, and I said to him, it's okay. It works. I like it. Leave it. Yeah? The minute you're able to tie what you truly sell, which is convenience, with the right consumers, the right channel, the right offering, and the right messaging, you would unlock the growth. So just give it a thought, sit down with your marketing partners. I always go back to Mr. Kenny for education in marketing. So, meet people like him, meet people like Godson, really dimension your proposition, your consumer target, the channel you want to go through. I suspect modern trade will be one of the key channels for you. And at 10,000 outlets, it will already make a difference for you. And it's easier to get into those channels with the right proposition. Just consider it and see if there's an unlock there. Yeah?
I think we've come to the end. Okay, there's one last question we can take.
Hello. So, my name is Adewale Badmus. I work for Sonex as sustainability manager. So it's interesting talking about communications and where we're trying to do food grade bottle-to-bottle recycling. And in the shrinking economy, we get a whole lot from brands saying we don't want to do sustainability, or we're reducing our sustainability spend because people are not going to buy the product if we increase the cost of the plastics. Spend more on collections, let's work together on collections, and we get a whole lot of that when there's this sort of forum. And my question is, how are companies communicating their sustainability strategy to consumers to allow them spend more on sustainability, because it affects a whole lot of us?
It's a double-edged sword for me. Suspecting that my sustainability manager is waiting now to come with a bigger bill. Look, I think one thing that organizations have realized is that sustainability is not a nice to do. It's a must do, right? I think the challenge is, at a time where there's a contraction in the economy and there's strain on finances and we cannot pass off everything to consumers, choices have to be made, right? Should we communicate sustainability to consumers? I think yes. I think the key thing to also consider is the receptivity index of consumers to that messaging today, right? If basic survival is the concern, then communicating sustainability would have to come with a lot of creativity to show what the impact will be and why we should still care, because there's a tomorrow after today. Does that mean that a lot of wealth will be unlocked? I don't know. I mean, does that mean a lot of budgets will still be unlocked? I don't know. But I think also for your industry, the question now is that recycling for food grade, where should it go? Right? If you take bottles from Eva, and you want to recycle into food grade for them to reuse, and they say that increases input cost, is that the place to put it in, or should it go into Tupperware for storage? I think you also have to be creative about the products you want to bring out of that. The one thing that is clear is you will generate revenue from collections, but you will generate revenue also from creative conversion into where it is most needed today. So I think consider that, right? But as an organization, I think all the companies here, I doubt that there's anyone that does not understand that sustainability is a must-do and is necessary for our long-term survival.
I work with GSK. My question would be, you've talked extensively about how organizations are able to weather this storm now and how to project what their route to market strategy will be. But there's a traditional gateway that you have not touched. Let's leave what has happened in the last 1 year around the macros. There was something that happened middle of this year, that was subsidy removal, that changed everything for a distributor who has invested in assets traditionally to go through wholesale and all sorts, who haven't even milked it currently. From your experience across sub-Saharan Africa, where subsidy had been removed long time ago, how would you want us to position a distributor for the time bomb that is coming? Because in the nearest future, you hear distributors saying, with diesel cost going up every day, I can put this foot on ground, and that has implication on everything, your primary, your route to market. How would you say we need to start positioning our distributor for the reality on ground.
The entirety of every single business owner in Nigeria today that is in the business of producing to sell has been enormous. And I shared much earlier in my deck, if it collapses from the top in terms of the distributor's model, then it's all gone. There's no secondary, no tech deployment, efficient use of insight, no generation of insight if the product is not where it should be. We've looked at many organizations looking at their distribution model, and in some cases, you've seen organizations who operated fewer, bigger, mega distributorships, and then you give a whole state to a distributor, then you have satellite locations where they have to cover, define clearly where they cover. And we've seen organizations who decided to go with mega distribution, a hybrid model in which they say bigger distributors where we can afford them, but fewer, more geographically relevant, lean working capital distributors in the right strategic places to position our products has been the order of the day for them. And then you look at the way it sits today, working capital and it's pressured. Price increases in the last 6 months, I've seen organizations taking close to 7, 8, 9, 10, 15 price increases back to back. Working capital is weakened. The cost of doing business for dealer has gone up. There are two angles to this. The number one, support platform that the organization will provide in most cases, and they are provided in most cases. Standing in an organization where all my transactions are in cash, as it sees today, but I've gone back to rethink how then do I sustain my business. My growth projection over the next 1-2 years hasn't changed, by the way. My margin has taken a hit because even the cost of doing my business, my S&D cost is 4x what it was the last 6 months now. And I've had to make some sacrifice from work out, they said much earlier. There's a margin expectation that you have to moderate in certain ways. And there's the bit about then providing support for the dealers. And in most cases, relooking your distributor model. If you stay within the space of fewer, bigger, mega distributors, at worst cost of fund, they seek working capital from the bank. You get 16, 17% to run a 3-4% gross margin business. It's just, you'd run it for 1-2 years and it's gone. So organization has to provide, and they are providing succor in terms of support for working capital. And again, in most of the cases, we've seen organizations jumping in to support dealers and distributors, whichever way you call them, in terms of having a skin in the game when it comes to the cost of redistribution. In some cases, it's been wholly owned by the organization, about 80%. In some cases, the partnership has been fostered and supports are provided. But the bottom line remains that the engine of growth of every business, the essence of having all the production lines and the finest of all technology to produce, is that there must be that pipeline and the competencies to move it to the distributors' warehouses at the primary level before it filters into secondary. So it's an hybrid approach. Support has to be provided, and it's being provided in certain cases. And margin has to be moderated along certain lines just to keep them going.
So just in addition, I'm not in the field, but again, let me say that the problem that you have primarily is your problem, not necessarily your distributor's problem, because of where you are placed. And when you think about it, that's why we have the essence of the joint business planning to begin with. I think when Demola was speaking earlier, in terms of when you're thinking of your strategy, you have to come up with option A, option B, option C, option D. At the end of the day, depending on how, can I say, sophisticated this distributor is, will determine his ability to really see long-term or sustainably. And that's where you come in as a business partner. What do I need to do to help this business survive? And how do I make them see it? And that's where it comes to the simplification. So again, if I look at myself, sometimes we sit down in back office and we come up with these nice plans. But then how does it translate to in the field? If we go back to the I want to call it organogram, but like route to market, right, where we have the tiered distributors. If this person doesn't exist, will my business exist? And if I take it back to the whole topic of a transformation, the change is imminent. We are looking at it today as a subsidy removal. Tomorrow it's something else. Cost of goods sold will always have a fluctuation, so it is going up. So I think it's to have that mindset that, yeah, we can jump subsidy today, but it's something else tomorrow. Again, nobody predicted COVID, but then supply was shrunk and then prices went up. So how, again, do we respond to the change? What systems are we prepared to put in place? And then just going back, like in terms of tactically, if you supply working capital, can I do a bridge? Many years ago, for example, when I worked at GSK, we evolved like distribution models. We had like the big distributors, and then we went into the smaller distributors, and we had a whole strategy and map looking at the different states and saying what is the GDP per capita per state and all of that. So I think maybe it's about even going back to the foundation and saying, look, if this model doesn't work, what can we do? How do we penetrate? Are these distributors that we even have today really the ones that will take us into the future? And maybe that's even another question that we need to ask in terms of classifying the distributors. So I mean, just to put that out there. So I know it's not an easy challenge, but it is what it is.
Just to further add to what Baron and Demola have said, I think for me, there was a research study that we carried out for one of the FMCG brands we work on in the month of July, and it was specifically for the hinterlands. And one thing that came out of that research study is the fact that we discovered that instead of each shop owner going to the market to buy goods, they now pool resources and empower one to go on behalf of all, because those areas were not being served, right, by the salesmen. A typical FMCG company can decide to empower that kind of thinking, that kind of platform. Why? Because subsidy removal has meant the cost to serve or the cost to service those guys is now 3 times what it used to be. So you can decide to have a platform that specifically deals with that in certain areas across the country. Another one, I admire Coca-Cola, because Coca-Cola's own strategy, they have the order generation team, and then they have the delivery guys. So the order generation guys are even 2 or 3 times the size of those that will deliver. So instead of your van going up and down every day, they're actually going to the places that have pre-ordered and have paid, and the delivery guys are just doing what? Delivering. Do you understand? So for the classic FMCG company, you need to look at where we are now and where ideally you'd like to be, and then come up with the different strategies that can help you get there. Another company I really admire is one of my clients, Nestle. And the project that we ran and we're still running for them is something that's very close to my heart. Yeah. When the new MD came in 2 years ago, I think it was, there's a global project that they initiated and they've continued in Nigeria, which is empowering rural women. That project reminds me of a company in the UK called Crazy George's. And I'll come back to Nestle in a minute. Crazy George's, there's a Mr. George that through insight in the UK back in the 80s was able to understand that banks were not financing poor people because poor people could not even get on the credit ladder. However, he understood that poor people, all they were looking for was just the opportunity for somebody to believe in them. So he had a furniture shop and he started giving small credit for those who couldn't get on the credit ladder to be able to buy their chair, their table, and pay small over time. And they discovered that the default rate was less than 2%. Why? Because by being given the opportunity to at least have a credit, they were less willing or less likely to default. Now, coming back to Nestle, the Rural Women Project is about empowering rural women in different communities. So, at every interval, we will gather these women together. They are already buying the products anyway, but we're now giving them 300% of what they normally buy on credit. You don't need any collateral. You don't need any bank reference on credit. And guess what? In 2 years, we've had less than 2% default. Why? Because we took a chance and we believed in them. So I think this is part of the rethinking that needs to start happening in this market if you truly want to shape the future that you desire. Thank you.
Check. Thank you so much, Mr. Kenyan. Yeah.
You know, this challenge that you've raised is a clear and present danger for every FMCG company, right? And, you know, it's about time that we're going to start having some dangerous rethinking, right, which defies the norms, right? You know, I think the first easy place to look at is efficiencies, yeah? Because you would have to go back and do your portfolio profiling and look at what your marginal contribution or gross contributions are across the different product lines and make sure that you are carrying a healthy basket. Yeah? And you need to somehow push for a change in the sales culture of carrying the fast-moving lines to making them use the fast-moving lines to carry the healthy basket. Because the good thing about your distribution cost is that it's an absolute naira and kobo, not in percentage, right? So you need to earn more margins to be able to afford that. But I think it's time for us to also start to consider channel alignments, right? A lot of us have distributors that are not sole distributors, right? They carry multi-company products, you know, and one of the things I've been laughing at is how much money FMCG companies put behind capex-heavy infrastructure for distribution. And one big question I've been asking my team is, if my salesmen are going to the same channel as another organization that is not competing with me, with the same distributor, and then they spend all their energy saying, I don't want to see another product in my sales van, right? As such, we have multiple salesmen calling on the same store multiple times during the day, irritating the the store owner, because now they have to have multiple transactions with multiple people from the same distributor. Is it not time for us to start looking for synergies in there, right? Should we not have more holistic view that helps everybody absorb the cost a little bit better, right? It's time for you to also spend more time with the Godsins and the Kushes to say, help me understand what works where and how, so that your strike rate improves. Yeah? Maybe it's time to even invest behind telesales teams so that your pre-orders are taken. Right? The one thing that we all need is that we must have an obsessive focus on zero waste. If it is not needed, if it is not a must, it should not be done. Right? This is the time to cut off every nice to do. This is the time to only put money, energy, and effort behind the must do's, right? Until we come out of this. And I promise you, whatever you think we are going through, is a joke compared to what Ghana has gone through in the last 18 months. Yeah? If I just give you a snapshot of 12 months in Ghana, July last year, the cedi was 6.8 to the dollar. December, it was 15 cedis to the dollar. Yeah? Cost of funds in Ghana went from 20% to 36%. How do you operate a business at interest rates of 36%? Where does the trade even play? Distributors were extending credits that they couldn't sustain, right? Consumer purchasing power had gone down the drain. I mean, like, people were worried about rent, school, food. What was left for categories that are discretionary? I mean, GSK is even an essential, right? The essential plus plus was no longer something to think about. We had to get creative. I give you an example. Some organizations had to sit down with different banks to see how do we finance the value chain, right? Eventually, ABSA had to go into a partnership with Masterbank, who had a CSR project to empower women, right? To be able to get them financing at 10% with no collateral so that products can move through the pipeline and we could extend footprint, right? We all got to that point out of desperation. What we shouldn't do in Nigeria is wait for the point of desperation before we get creative in our alignments. And I think, that's one of the things that we need to do as an industry today, to find out the synergies, leverage the synergies, and accelerate our growth. Okay? So just think about that as well.
So what Mr. Kenny mentioned, the concept of group buying, multiple of our partners, Reckitt's and the PNGs of the world, they're already experimenting in the other emerging markets. And what Mr. Coyote mentioned, taking the order via telesales is again something we are doing with multiple companies. So these are all strategies which needs to be tried, and doing that, be it optimization, delivery optimization, RTM, RTC optimization, whatever cash that you save, multiple of our partners do pass on the benefit in their channels to moderate those margins. Thank you so much for those multiple answers. We have one last question from Udoka Eze from Zoom. What are the available data sources in a highly fragmented distribution system in Nigeria? And that will be the last question for the day. I would love it if Godson can take up that question and close the panel. So just to repeat the question, what are the available data sources in a highly fragmented distribution system in Nigeria?
Okay, thank you very much. You've been a fantastic moderator. Thank you very much. Right. I like it when people talk about data, because data could mean a lot of things. There are two types of data: structured, unstructured. There's organized, there's disorganized data. And then people talk about data as though once you have it, all your problem is out of the way, right? It's just the beginning of your problem, right? So when you get data, you have to refine it to get insight, right? Then insight becomes a trophy. And when you get insight, you then need to execute the insight timely. The ultimate trophy is results, and that's what we all work towards. So even when you get good insight and you execute wrongly, you also fail. I think Baron spoke to that earlier on. So I want to say that when it comes to data, the data is there in front of us. A lot of them are sitting on offline dormant systems. I think, for instance, if I take a modern market like ShopRite, right? I don't know how many branches they have today. Every day people are checking in and checking out. Where is that data? Who are they willing to share with? What are the insights locked in that data? What are people's buying habits? What are the patterns? What are the seasonalities locked into that in that data? It's retained within them. So the data is everywhere. What's not happening is the sharing of this data. And that's what we're hoping events like this will help businesses drive. Don't lose anything by sharing at least high-level data that will allow everybody else perform better. We're running out of time, so I'm going to just stop there and then move on. One key thing I was going to speak to, specifically with what Baron said about executing, her experience executing distribution management systems and how it fails. And I say this to all our clients and prospects. one of the biggest reasons these executions fail is that we all go to the same distributor and try to sell the same product with different label. So Pernod wants a DMS sitting in the same distributor. Diageo wants his own DMS sitting in the same distributor. So one of the chief reasons you get rejection is because you're all asking for the same thing when you can actually coexist and see what the sellout data is from that location. Transparent, right? So we all go and then we try to ring fence our efforts. So 80% of the time we fail, right? So people, I mean, we've seen businesses that have gone as far as hiring people to sit in distributors. These are resources that could be shared, right? Sellout is sellout, and we can sort it out and share the data transparently. So I think the industry in Nigeria, and this has been done in most of the developed markets, the industry in Nigeria today requires a lot more collaboration than competition. And I am an advocate of the sky is so wide open that we can all fly. So with that, I want to once again ask that we put our hands together for our panelists. I'm extremely grateful to you. What has been said on this stage today, if you pay $6,500 to Stanford, you will not, and I promise you, you will not get this, because this is local, it is real, it's coming from people who have gotten their hands dirty over the last 20 odd years. Sitting on this table is over 40 years worth of experience working in this market, and we do not take it for granted. There is no better, the last 10 years as a business, we were selling, and it did appear like you're speaking in the dark, because how much you can convey is a function of who is sitting on the other side of the table. I'm happy to announce that we're at a point in the industry where people who understand the role of data, insights, analytics, and who understand what the future should look like are actually steering businesses. And the future is very promising for that. So I'm just going to do a quick recap of what was said by each of them. So I'll start with Kayode. Yes. I'll start with Kayode. He tried to answer the question, what do you think the next 3 years of marketing will look like? So he answered by saying there will be a faster adoption of DMS systems and virtual marketplaces that drive sale adoption. So there are more deployment of technology in managing consumer rollouts. So more businesses will be looking to leverage technology to reach the last mile, because the customer is now hybrid. He's online, he's offline, he's on the move. You have to be able to reach and sell to him wherever they are part time. A route to market strategy is not an organizational chart. It's a constantly evolving model, because your customer is constantly evolving. So it's okay for you to continuously optimize your model as much as monthly, if the market disrupts to that level. Barong spoke about the roadmap to digital transformation. The ability to generate, understand, understand, and implement the insight generated using technology. So at this point, I also want to add to what she said by saying that, by mentioning that technology in of itself is just a tool. Now, this is where people make mistake. You have a problem, you throw technology at it. Technology is not a solution. It is a tool. It is subject to the processes and the people element that drives such a technology. So as long as you continue to have it behind your mind that this is a tool, it doesn't work magic, then you're closer to your destination. Again, I want us to put our hands together for Demola, the rock star. he's someone you meet before you meet him because he carries that energy. He's very passionate about this. He's very passionate about what he does. And there are not many people in the industry who are very willing to share. And I speak to the insight that he shared here today. People go to grave with such insights. They don't share it. But here is he, and he's willing to share it with us. So during the session, he spoke about he lives with people and okay, he spoke about his experience. He said, I've had to crack the rock to create my own results. So it means going above and beyond when every indicator says you are the dead end. That ability to continue to drive progress. We all listen to his experience in Diageo. Consistency of knowing what you want, understanding trends, digging into data, and working with right people will see you through any phase in the Nigerian market. I was having a conversation with him earlier on before we started, and we spoke about how 50% of the African market is Nigeria, South Africa, and Egypt. And I say to you here that if you win in Nigeria, you've won Africa. There is no more disjointed, complex, strata economy that you will find in Africa. Every 100 kilometers you cover, you're dealing with a different kind of people, a different kind of value. So your designs must be agile enough to respond to these continuous changes as you go down the road. There's so much here that I cannot go through, but I'll just do my best. Okay. Mr. Kenny also spoke a lot about entrepreneurship, what you need to start and how you need to go. I always say to people, so there's this big question, entrepreneurship, is it something you learn? Or is it something you are born to do? I still don't know the answer. 10 years after, I do not know the answer. But one thing is common. I didn't know until today. We share a lot of history, just like him. 13 years ago, I packed up my bag with absolutely nothing and left the comforts of my house in the UK to start a new journey. I don't even know where I was going. So what you see today looks very straightforward, but it's walking backwards. It was not a straight line. So brace yourself up. It's going to be rough. And it's completely okay if you cannot be an entrepreneur. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't let anybody sell you that whole thing that if you're not an entrepreneur, you can actually live a good life, be successful without being an entrepreneur. So for those who are called, brace up, wear your bulletproof, and I will meet you in the battle line. So with that said, I want to thank everybody. In the last 5 years, I attend events like this, a lot of them in this very hall. I have never seen an event that lasted this long and still had this many people sitting. So can we put our hands together for everybody? So I want to think that we've all been successful. I can now go home and sleep. So thank you very much. I'm going to yield the microphone back to my amazing sister and rock star, Nkiru.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for the wealth of knowledge shared here. I'm joining my own voice too. I learned a lot. Thank you, and thank you again. You can now, please a round of applause for this brilliant mind.